this if there wasn't that specter of government looming over his head. That, yeah, it sounds really nice. So we trust that, one, the Nature Conservancy is there and that they're going to say, yes, we want to work with you. Here are the sensitive areas we want to protect. We don't need government. You and I will work on something. Two, that he's going to be sensitive to the areas he's going to rape and pillage, including for timber and for homes. And why is it that Bill Gates gets that trophy home? That's just not equitable in that one secluded spot in that property. I mean, we're putting a lot of trust into one guy or one corporation. Wouldn't it be easier if the federal government made it into a national park or national forest? One of the cities up here that spend tons of money on open space, whether it's Boulder or Aspen, or even the state through its lottery fund says, you know what, if that company's selling them land, we'll just gobble it up. And therefore we can protect the whole thing. We've got the cash and we don't have to worry about any problems.
Well, you raised an interesting perspective that the average person, I think, holds when it comes to protecting property, but I think it, in my mind, raises at least three important questions. One is, can this be sustained in an economy like the one we're in with the government running the kind of debt that it's running? Will we have the resources to sustain this? Sustainability requires profitability. End of that discussion as far as I'm concerned. I teach a business school class at Stanford University. I tell those students, you want sustainability, you better make it profitable. If it isn't, you have to either hope government will do it, hope charity will take care of it, and we know in this downturn that won't work. So that's point number one. Point number two is it protected? And we complain all the times about the mountains that are being burned off and resulting in more runoff into the city's water system, so you have to improve filtration and those kinds of things. There is no doubt that the national forests in this country are not being well managed. So to say they're protected, not quite so clear to me. And finally, I think it's important to ask, what are we giving up when we say let's protect it? And I'll use the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. A football that's been kicked around by every administration for the last 5 or 6. Conduct this thought experiment. Suppose that a consortium of environmental groups owned ANWR and said no to oil development. They would be giving up billions of dollars worth of revenue that they could use for other things, saving an endangered species over here, preserving a piece of land over there. And they could do it in an environmentally, and would do it in an environmentally sensitive way. The bottom line here, in my opinion, is market forces, just like the rental car, force people to think of the environment as an asset, not a liability.
As a side note, Gail Norton used to be on our board of trustees, and she was telling me one day they looked at the footprint of ANWR, and they said, how much really would we be open to drilling? Not where the rigs, but open to any possible drilling. And it worked out this way. If all of ANWR were one football field, the part open to drilling would be the size of 2 pizzas on that football field. That's what it was.
I've seen a map like that.
Let's talk a little bit about endangered species. That's something here in Colorado that's near and dear to all of our hearts. I mean, we've got important species, but I see it both ways. I see that there are developments that could have gone in, but there's some fish there that says, no, you can't put a dam there. We're gonna have to protect that fish. Well, we could put a subdivision there, but there's a rodent there that is found only there and no place else, and therefore we've got to worry about this. Now, Colorado has had a history of its, bringing things to the point of extinction. We used to have buffaloes running right where we're sitting. What's the answer to that? And more importantly, what's the free market answer? If the answer right now is don't build that dam, don't build that housing development, if the EPA were around when this building was built, maybe we don't build here.
Well, first, let me take the buffalo. Who saved the buffalo? It was the entrepreneurs who said there are only a few of them left. Let's put them into pens, breed them back, and eventually they are the buffalo that actually occupy Yellowstone National Park, for example. So it was the marketplace, not the government, that kept the buffalo around.
Are there any wild buffalo?
I'm told that genetically you cannot now find buffalo that really were strictly wild, that all of these trace back to a relatively small few that started in Texas. I'm not a geneticist, so I can't.
But I mean, the buffalo was brought to the verge.
Sure.
I mean, we were talking about just a few hundred left.
And why? It was like the rental car. No one owned them. It paid you to shoot them. You got the revenue from the meat or the hides, and somebody else lost the buffalo in the future. So it was like the rental car that nobody owns. So the key to markets is ownership. We come back to endangered species in a very real kind of way. In the southeastern United States is a bird called the Red-Cockaded Woodpecker. That bird...
They taste kind of gamey, though.
Well, they're sort of like bald eagle, but not quite the same. They're smaller. The Red-Cockaded Woodpecker, we've all heard those jokes too many times. The Red-Cockaded Woodpecker has been listed for a long time, and it has
an endangered species.
Hasn't made much progress. And one of the things that happens if you have a Red-Cockaded Woodpecker on your property and the Fish and Wildlife Service finds that out, they will cease use of that property for all intents and purposes. That is to say, you can't cut the trees. So you've been nurturing these trees, a bunch of birds move in, you thought you were going to get some revenue off these trees, and now you're told you can't cut them. What would you do before the birds moved in? That's a fairly straightforward economic question. Cut them now while you can. Data show unequivocally that trees with birds ready to move in, that is more birds kind of surrounding them, are cut prematurely compared to when the market would dictate because people don't want to lose that right. Well, how could we fix that?
Of harvesting the tree.
Of harvesting the tree at an older age when it actually might provide better habitat. So what could we do? Well,
you can
two
shoot
things
the bird as soon as it gets in.
And there is the old...
And that happens. I mean,
Sure.
There are people who kill these animals knowing that if the EPA finds out that they're there, they're out of revenue.
But the difference is, you don't, in the case of cutting the trees, if you kill the animal and get caught, you're in trouble. If you cut the trees, you've done nothing illegal until the birds are nesting in them. Okay. So this is a lot safer way to deal with the problem. So what can we do about it? And let me give you another example that didn't happen. A friend of mine wanted to reintroduce grayling into a stream in Montana, a small fish, that was there when Lewis and Clark went through, no longer in the stream, wanted to do it, and his friends in Fish and Wildlife Service said, we may list that fish. If we do, you will never have your cattle drinking out of that stream again. Do you think he put that fish back in? On his own, privately he wanted to do it. Answer is, of course, no, he didn't. So what might we do? There are two things going on in endangered species preservation that I think are crucial here. One involves the government. So it's not purely free market, but it gets the incentives right. And it is, if you go out and create habitat that wasn't habitat before and find space where red-cockaded woodpeckers can live, and they move in, you can get credits that are tradable. International Paper, on its big pieces of land in the southeast, has credits that are worth, for a colony of woodpeckers, tens of 20s of woodpeckers, that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, because
so this is a paper company that owns land, and they harvest the trees, turn it into paper.
But they say, we're going to leave these trees as woodpecker habitat, because when Walmart wants to build down the road here, they're going to have to take some habitat out. We'll sell them one of our credits. They can put in their Walmart, and we get the money for saving these.
Why does this have a funny smell like cap and trade? The idea that you can say, all right, you can cut down trees over here because we've got trees over there.
There's a slight difference here, though. You have to create the thing that's capped first. You have to create the habitat. It's not like saying we're going to put a limit. It's saying build as much of this habitat as you want, International Paper.